Hey, Jonathan here at Colfax Math. In this video, I'm going to go over essential steps to making any kind of cutting board. I'm going to do the whole thing as a time lapse, so it'll go really quick, just covering the most important parts of surfacing, sanding, routering, finish. These are all examples of cutting boards. The one in the video is going to be this large mahogany one here that I'm doing as a custom job, but the steps will always be the first step always has to be safety. Safety is job number one. So the first thing you need to do is learn how to use the tools properly and be trained by a professional. Don't use any of these tools until you've been trained. All right, let's get started.
Measure the height. Yeah, no, measure the width from here to here.
Laminated overnight on a CNC cut. Okay, so this wood comes from the lumberyard surface 2 size, meaning that it's already plain. So the first step is to surface a third side on the joiner to get one straight edge. It might take a couple of passes, and then once it's jointed on one edge, then I just cross cut to rough length. Not perfect length, just kind of rough length, leaving an extra inch or so on there. After it's cut to rough length, I'm going to rip on the table saw, and that's going to surface the fourth side. So now I'm surfacing here. I'm not really ripping the width. I'm just surfacing the opposing side to the joiner. So the jointed edge goes against the fence, and I rip parallel. Once I'm surfaced all 4 sides, I glue up with paper towels ready. I use Type Bond number 3 glue. It works really well. It's waterproof. I get a good layer on it. I have my clamps pretty well preset before I get the glue on there. And then I use these edge clamps to make sure all my boards are going to be flush. If they're not flush, you're going to have to waste a lot of wood planing it down to get them flush. So I have those 4 end clamps on there to get them flush, and I still need a few more pipe clamps. I'm working hard to make sure they're all flat down on the parallel clamps. As I go through these clamps, I tighten them up a little bit at a time, and I keep working my way around, tightening opposing clamps, and just keep going back and forth until they're as tight as can be. They need to dry for at least 2-3 hours, and then now I'm unclamping after I think 3 hours of drying, and it looks pretty good. And I'm going to grab a metal scraper and scrape off all the excess glue. So scraping both sides. Back to the table saw, I want to make sure that these 2 sides after glue up are still parallel. So that is really just a surfacing cut. So I'm back to surfaced on 4 sides. I grab a miter sled, and on this miter sled, I'm surfacing my 5th side and my 6th side. So I'm just making sure that is perpendicular to my straight edges. I'm going to flip it over and surface my 6th side, and I am cross-cutting to length as well at the same time. So now I'm surfaced on all 6 sides. I go over the planer and I'm planing down, never taking off more than 50 thou on a single pass. There was the bottom, now the top. There are some planer marks, but everything's completely flush. I'm going to come down with one more pass. I started at 13/16 with a teeny bit of a lip, and I'm still way over 3/4. Over to the sander. You could use a random orbital sander or the Rotex, always sanding with the grain, and it's really important you work your way up through the grit. So starting with something like 150 grit to 180 grit, then a 220 grit. I'm all done sanding. Over to the router. First thing I do is I check my router bit height. That was a piece of scrap wood. That is the right round over I want. Now I'm ready to router. Always using a hold down stick. Never getting my fingers near that cutter. Holding it down all of the way. The end grain I'm very carefully routering so I don't get any blowouts. On this board I'm only routering 4 sides, but you can router all 8 sides, top and bottom. When I'm all done routering, I go back to the sander. This is an orbital sander. It's a Rotex, but any orbital sander working through the grains will work. This is a one-sided cutting board, so I'm not protecting the bottom side. but you should have paper towels underneath it so you're not scratching it up. Sanding the edges. This is all 220 grit after I'm done routering, just cleaning it all up. And then when you're all done with this, then you use a finish sander with a 240, 260 grit. Clean it off, clean all the dust off, and then this is a Booz food grade finish. So make sure you finish with food grade and paper towels. I wipe it in completely, let it soak in, and I'm really conscientious also to oil up the end grains and the sides of it. The end grain will soak up a lot.